I awoke to the rumbling of Shakespeare, my smoky cat, who was demanding breakfast as usual at 7 in the morning. Despite the pain in my knees, I got out of bed with a smile. 64 isn't such an advanced age, but years spent bent over antiques in constant tension hadn't gone unnoticed. My one-bedroom apartment on the second floor of an old but well-kept house in Central High Point has been my sanctuary for the past 15 years. Not luxurious, but cozy and filled with memorabilia I'd collected throughout my life. The living room, with its bay window and antique mahogany desk I'd restored myself, served as my office at the same time. The walls were decorated with reproductions of Vermeer and Rembrandt, a reminder of the European museums where I had once spent hours studying the masters. "I'm coming, great Shakespeare," I muttered, heading for the kitchen. My phone flashed a notification of a new email. I ignored it, focusing on my morning ritual. Coffee first, then everything else, Cornelius Taft's immutable rule. While the coffee brewed, I glanced out the window at the neighboring house. Beatrice Winslow, my neighbor and longtime friend, was already tending to her garden. A 68-year-old former college literature professor, she had moved to High Point about the same time I had after my divorce. Weekly Thursdays over chess and a nice glass of wine had become our tradition. Coffee was ready, and I finally opened my email. Most of the emails were the usual spam, but one caught my eye. The sender was Adelaide Pierce, curator at the Institute of Historical Heritage. I knew her by reputation, a respected scholar working with rare historical documents. "Dear Mr. Taft, the Institute of Historical Heritage is seeking an expert to evaluate a recently discovered collection. Given your reputation in the field of historical documents, we would like to discuss a possible collaboration. The case requires absolute confidentiality. If you are interested, please contact me by noon today." I hummed. My reputation. 20 years ago, I'd been practically banished from the professional community because of an accusation of forensic forgery. The Jefferson Letters scandal had destroyed my career at Hayward & Sons, the auction house where I was a leading expert on historical documents. At the time, I insisted on the authenticity of the collection, which was later declared to be a skillful forgery. Years later, it turned out that I was right, but my reputation was already ruined. Since then, I have worked as an independent appraiser, advising private collectors and small auction houses. I lived modestly but decently. However, offers from institutions such as the Institute of Historical Heritage were rare. I dialed the number listed in the letter. "Adelaide Pierce speaking," came the energetic female voice. "Cornelius Taft speaking. I received your letter about the collection. Mr. Taft, thank you for your prompt reply. You're the only expert we're willing to entrust with this work. It's about a recently discovered archive believed to belong to one of the founding fathers. The documents were found in the vault of an old estate in Virginia." "Why me?" I asked directly. "There must be dozens of experts with impeccable reputations." A pause on the other end of the line. "Because you were right then, with the Jefferson Letters. We did our own investigation. Your methodology was impeccable. Plus, you have unique experience with documents from this particular period." I sat down, feeling my pulse quicken. "When do you want to start?" "Immediately. The terms of the contract are more than generous. $57,000 a month for a project that will take at least a year. Full confidentiality, of course." I almost choked on my coffee. 57,000? A month? These documents could rewrite the history of our country's founding, Mr. Taft. Their value is immeasurable, as is their liability. I'll have to think about it. Sure, but no more than 24 hours. The collection requires immediate appraisal and conservation. After the call ended, I sat staring out the window for a long time. $57,000 a month, a sum that would change my life forever. I could buy the house I'd always dreamed of. I could travel. But most importantly, I could finally prove my professional worth. The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my musings. The name Peyton popped up on the screen. My daughter. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for another unpleasant conversation. "Hi, Peyton," I answered in as cheerful a voice as possible. "Daddy, did you forget?" Her voice sounded annoyed. "You promised to take Octavia to the doctor today. Damn it. I really forgot. My granddaughter, the only person in the family who seemed to genuinely love me. I'm sorry, I have an important appointment today. An unexpected job offer." A pause, then a sarcastic laugh. "Another once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Dad, at your age, you should stop chasing ghosts. It's a serious offer, Peyton, from the Heritage Institute." "Sure, sure, sure." Her voice oozed condescension. "Anyway, Ashton said he'd drive her himself. He doesn't trust your wreck. The last thing we need is for you to break down in the middle of the road with Octavia." I gritted my teeth. My Volvo was 15 years old, but it was in excellent condition. I took meticulous care of the car, as I did with everything I owned. "Tell Octavia I'll call her tonight," I said, trying to stay calm. "If you don't forget." Peyton snorted and hung up. I put the phone away, feeling a familiar heaviness in my chest. My daughter. We'd once been close, but after the scandal and divorce from her mother, everything had changed. Peyton, then 17, had chosen her mother's side. I didn't blame her. At the time, the press portrayed me as a fraud trying to cheat the auction house. After Peyton married Ashton Hawthorne, an ambitious financial analyst, our relationship became even more strained. Ashton made it clear that he considered me a loser and a bad influence on their daughter. I stepped out onto the small balcony of my apartment, watching Beatrice fiddling with her roses. She spotted me and waved. "Is there any coffee left?" she called out. I was almost done. 15 minutes later, Beatrice was sitting in my kitchen listening with interest to the Institute's offer. $57,000? She whistled. "Cornelius, that's amazing. But why such a strange sum?" I shrugged. "I have no idea. Maybe some kind of formula for calculating it. More importantly, they know the truth about Jefferson's letters. Beatrice knew the whole story. We met when I first moved to High Point, trying to make a fresh start after the scandal." "You have to take it," she said firmly. "This is your chance to not only restore your reputation, but to ensure a comfortable old age." "And what about the principle of never return to the scene of the crime?" I grinned. "First of all, there was no crime. Secondly, this is a completely different place. And thirdly," she smiled slyly, "imagine your son-in-law's face when he finds out how much you earn." I laughed. "Even if I agree, I won't boast about the money." "Of course not. But a little gloating won't hurt you." Beatrice finished her coffee. "Besides, you'll be able to spend more time with Octavia. Maybe even help with college. My granddaughter was a gifted child with an amazing flair for history and art. At 14, she was already reading Plutarch and could spend hours listening to me talk about European museums and historical artifacts. Peyton and Ashton disapproved of this fascination, deeming it impractical. They saw their daughter as a future financier or lawyer, not a historian. "You're right," I nodded. "It's settled. I'll call and accept the offer." After Beatrice left, I contacted Adelaide Pierce and informed her of my decision. We agreed to meet the next day to sign all the necessary documents and discuss the details. I spent the rest of the day going through my old notes on documents from the founding period of the United States. There was serious work to be done, and I wanted to be prepared. In the evening, as promised, I called Octavia. "Grandfather," her joyful voice always warmed my heart. "Daddy said you couldn't take me to the doctor because of work. Is that true?" "Yes, sweetheart. I've been offered a very interesting project." "Tell me about it." She sounded genuinely curious, so rare in our family. "It has to do with some very old and important documents, but I can't tell you the details yet." "A secret project, like in spy movies?" I could hear her smiling. Something like that. How was your doctor's appointment? It was fine. He said my allergies are under control. Dad wanted to talk to you, but then he changed his mind. He and Mom were arguing in the kitchen. I tensed up. Ashton never wanted to just talk to me. What were they arguing about? I don't know exactly. Something about money and the house. Mom said they couldn't afford the vacation in Europe that Dad wanted, and he said that if Grandpa had— Oh, never mind. If Grandpa had what? I asked softly. A pause. If Grandpa had done something useful and helped the family for once in his life instead of playing the great scientist, her voice became quiet. I'm sorry, Grandfather. I didn't mean to. It's okay, honey. I tried to keep my voice lighthearted. Adults sometimes say stupid things when they're angry. I know you're not playing around. You're a real scientist. And I want to be like you when I grow up. Thank you, Octavia. That's the best compliment I've ever gotten. After talking to my granddaughter, I sat in the dark for a long time thinking. My daughter and her husband had considered me a burden, an empty dreamer who had wasted his life in a fake job. Now I had a chance not only to prove my professional worth, but also to support myself financially and perhaps help Octavia get the education she deserved. The phone rang again. This time, the number was unfamiliar. Cornelius Taft speaking, I answered. Mr. Taft, this is Adelaide Pierce again. I apologize for the late call, but there's news that can't wait. We've received confirmation of the authenticity of part of the collection. It's about the personal correspondence of several of the founding fathers, including previously unknown letters from Alexander Hamilton. We want you to start immediately. We'll have a car pick you up tomorrow morning. My heart is racing. Hamilton's letters. Historical documents of this caliber could overturn established ideas about the founding of our country. I'll be ready, I answered and hung up. I didn't sleep much that night thinking about the work ahead of me and how it might change my life, and possibly my relationship with my family. A black car with tinted windows arrived at exactly 8 in the morning. The driver, a silent man in an austere suit, opened the door for me, and I climbed into the back seat, holding my tattered leather briefcase tightly. It contained my tools, loupes of various magnifications, special gloves, a few reference books, and a notebook with notes I'd made the night before. "Good morning, Mr. Taft," came a voice from the speaker. "I hope you slept well. The trip will take about an hour." I recognized Adelaide Pierce's voice. "I can't say I slept well," I admitted honestly. Too excited about the prospect of working with the Hamilton collection. "I understand your excitement." I could hear the smile in her voice. "I have to warn you that you'll have to sign some non-disclosure documents before you can begin. The Institute is taking unprecedented security measures." "Of course." "And another thing," she added after a pause. "No one, not even your loved ones, is to be told about the contents of the collection, at least not until the official announcement of the opening." I chuckled to myself. What loved ones could we be talking about? Beatrice? Perhaps. But I certainly wouldn't tell my daughter and son-in-law. They wouldn't believe me. I saw Ashton's sarcastic face, the condescending smile he gave me every time I mentioned my work. "Don't worry, Miss Pierce," I replied. "I can keep a secret." An hour later, we arrived at a modern building on the outskirts of town. Nothing about its exterior suggested that it might contain historical treasures, just an ordinary office complex, like dozens in any city. Adelaide Pierce met me in the spacious lobby. She appeared to be a young woman no older than 40, with intelligent eyes and a determined chin. "Welcome to the Institute, Mr. Taft." She gave me a firm handshake. "Come on, I'll show you your work area and the collection." We took the elevator down to the underground floor, going through several layers of security, including retinal scans. Finally, Adelaide opened a massive door leading into a large laboratory-like room. "This is where you will work," she said. "Climate-controlled, special lighting, all the necessary tools for research and conservation. and, of course, the collection itself. In the center of the room stood a large table with several locked containers. "This is the first batch of documents." Adelaide walked over to the table and carefully opened one of the containers. "Take a look." I leaned over the container and my breath caught. A letter written in neat handwriting on yellowed paper, signed at the bottom, "Yours always, A. Hamilton." "Amazing," I whispered, carefully putting on my gloves. The condition was excellent for a document of this age. They'd been stored in an airtight container in the wall of the old manor house. "Perfect conditions for preserving the paper," Adelaide explained. "I'll leave you alone with the collection. Here is your temporary pass and a contact number. If you need anything else, just call." Left alone, I immersed myself in my work. Time lost meaning as I carefully studied document after document, making notes, checking the authenticity of the paper, the ink, the handwriting. It was correspondence between Hamilton and several other political figures of the time, including previously unknown letters to James Madison. I didn't notice how the day flew by. It was only when Adelaide returned and gently reminded me that it was 7 o'clock in the evening that I was surprised to find that I had not eaten or even drunk water since morning. "You have to take care of yourself, Mr. Taft," she said with a slight smile. "The project is meant to last a long time. We don't want you to burn out on the first day." "I'm sorry," I rubbed my eyes. "I forget everything when I'm working." "I understand. A car will take you home. Same time tomorrow?" "Of course." I carefully put my notes in my briefcase. "Miss Pierce, these documents, they're fascinating. They may change our understanding of some aspects of early American politics. That's why we came to you," she nodded. "Your reputation as someone who sees what others miss was a deciding factor. On the drive home, I felt pleasantly tired and exhilarated. For the first time in many years, I was doing truly important work, and well-paid work at that. Maybe life gives you a second chance after all. When I got home, I found Shakespeare meowing unhappily at the empty bowl. "Sorry, old boy," I stroked his furry head. It had been an unusual day. After the cat was fed, I found a note slipped under the door. Beatrice's handwriting. "Just came by to see if everything was all right. Shakespeare is fed. Waiting to hear about the first day. B." I smiled. "It's good to have a friend who cares about you and your cat." Just as I was about to call her, my phone rang. Ashton's name popped up on the screen. That's weird, it was usually Peyton. "Hello?" I answered with some wariness. "Cornelius," my son-in-law's voice sounded unnaturally friendly. "How are you?" "Fine, thank you. Something wrong?" "Why, happened." He laughed fake laugh. "We just wanted to invite you to dinner this Saturday. It's a family thing, no big deal." I frowned. I'd been invited to family events no more than 5 times in the last 3 years, and each time it had ended in awkwardness and tension. "What's the dinner in honor of?" I asked bluntly. "We just want to get together. Octavia's been asking about you." We have some news." I sighed. Ashton never just called. Something was brewing and I wasn't sure I wanted to be a part of it. On the other hand, the chance to see Octavia. "Okay," I agreed. "What time?" 6 o'clock. "And Cornelius." He paused. "Would you mind not telling Octavia about your, historical stuff this time? Peyton and I are worried she's getting too caught up in this impractical stuff." I felt my fists clench. "History is hardly impractical, Ashton." Yeah, sure." He laughed fake laugh again. "It's just that we want her to focus on subjects that will help her build a career. You understand?" "I understand," I replied dryly. "I'll see you Saturday." I hung up the phone and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Shakespeare jumped on my lap, demanding attention. "What do you say, old boy?" I scratched him behind the ear. "Is it worth going?" The cat only purred in response, covering his eyes in pleasure. For the next 3 days, I was fully immersed in the collection. Every morning a car came to pick me up, and every evening I returned home, physically exhausted but emotionally energized. The documents proved to be a veritable historical bombshell. They contained unknown details about the formation of the financial system of the young United States and Hamilton's personal opinions about his contemporaries. Beatrice was the only person with whom I shared my impressions, carefully avoiding specific details. "You look happy," she remarked as we sat on my balcony Friday evening. "I haven't seen you like this in a long time." "I feel needed," I admitted, as if all those years of waiting and fighting for my reputation had finally borne fruit. "It should be," she raised her glass of wine. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," I echoed. We were silent, enjoying the warm evening and the view of the small park across the street. "I'm going to Peyton and Ashton's for dinner tomorrow," I said finally. I had no idea what they wanted. Beatrice pressed her lips together. "Be careful. That Ashton never seemed sincere to me." "I know, but I want to see Octavia." "Of course," she squeezed my hand gently. "Just remember that you don't have to put up with their neglect, especially now that your career is on the rise again." Saturday came all too quickly. I put on my best tweed jacket, dark blue shirt, and khaki pants. After some thought, I decided to add a silk handkerchief to my breast pocket, a small touch of elegance that always lifted my spirits. Peyton and Ashton's house was in an upscale neighborhood in High Point A, three-story colonial-style mansion with a perfectly manicured lawn and ornamental shrubs. I parked my Volvo between Ashton's gleaming BMW and Peyton's brand-new Lexus, noting the contrast. Octavia opened the door before I could ring the bell. "Grandpa!" She hugged me with genuine joy. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too, sweetheart." I hugged her back, noting how much she had grown in the past few months. 14 was such a difficult age, but Octavia seemed to be moving through it with a grace I'd always admired. "There's so much I want to tell you," she whispered. "I found a terrific book on the women of the American Revolution." "Octavia!" Peyton's sharp voice interrupted our conversation. "Don't keep Grandpa on the doorstep." My daughter appeared in the hallway, impeccably dressed and coiffed as always. At 37, she was an exact replica of her mother, the same straight posture, the same piercing blue eyes, the same determined chin. Only her facial expression was different, where her mother had warmth. Peyton had cold calculation. "Hello, Daddy," she smiled, strained, and kissed me lightly on the cheek. "Come on in. Ashton's already opened the wine." I followed her into the spacious living room where Ashton stood by the fireplace holding a glass of red wine. He was a tall, well-built man with premature gray on his temples, which he thought made him look solid. "Cornelius!" He smiled broadly, extending his hand to me. "It's good to see you. How are you? How's work?" "I'm fine, thanks." I shook his hand, noting the unusual cordiality. Usually he just gave me a brief nod and then quickly moved on to other topics. "I hear you have a new project?" He handed me a glass of wine. "Something serious?" I looked at him suspiciously. How did he know? "Yeah, I'm working on an appraisal of a collection," I answered evasively. "It's not a big deal." "Don't be modest, Dad," Peyton interjected, taking a seat on the couch. "Octavia said it was a secret project, like in spy movies." "Sounds intriguing." I cast a glance at my granddaughter, who lowered her eyes in embarrassment. "I'm sorry, Grandpa," she whispered. "I was just so excited for you." "It's okay," I smiled softly at her. "It's just that the project is really confidential." "Confidential?" Ashton raised his eyebrows. "That sounds serious. And who's the client? Unless it's a secret, of course." "I'm afraid it's a secret." I sipped my wine, hoping the subject would be closed. Ashton exchanged a quick glance with Peyton, which I couldn't decipher. "Dinner is almost ready," Peyton announced, standing up. "Octavia, help me in the kitchen." When the women came out, Ashton sat down across from me, leaning forward with a look of confidence. Listen, Cornelius, I wanted to talk to you before dinner. You see, Peyton and I are having some financial difficulties. That's it. I should have known. What kind of complications? I asked cautiously. Nothing catastrophic. He waved his hand. Just some investments that didn't work out as expected. And the mortgage on the house went up. You know how it is. I did know, but only theoretically. I've never lived beyond my means or taken out a loan I couldn't pay back. What's your point, Ashton? He coughed. We thought, since you've got a good project coming up, maybe you could help the family out a little. After all, we've always taken care of you, invited you to the holidays, let you see Octavia. I could hardly contain my laughter. Taken care of? Let me see you. They did everything they could to limit my contact with my granddaughter and never missed an opportunity to remind me of the burden I was on the family. I have expenses too, I said calmly, and I haven't gotten paid for the new project yet. But you will, won't you? His eyes sparkled. And judging by all this secrecy, it's going to be a lot of money. At that moment, Peyton and Octavia returned carrying dinner dishes. What were you two talking about? Peyton asked, setting the plates down. I was telling Cornelius about our financial difficulties, Ashton answered bluntly. Dad. Peyton sat down next to me, putting her hand on my shoulder, a gesture she only used when she wanted something. We rarely ask for help, you know that, but we really need support right now. Ashton mentioned possible layoffs at his company, and Octavia's private school has raised fees. I thought you were transferring me to a public school, Octavia intervened, frowning. You said you couldn't pay for Briarwood anymore. Peyton threw a warning glance at her daughter. We're considering different options, dear. Dinner continued in a tense atmosphere. Ashton and Peyton took turns describing their financial difficulties, while Octavia silently picked at her food, clearly uncomfortable. I listened, increasingly irritated by their transparent attempts at manipulation. What about your bonus you were talking about last month? Octavia asked suddenly, turning to her father. You said it would cover my school for next year. Ashton choked on his wine. It's complicated, dear. The bonus has been postponed. But you bought new golf clubs, she said innocently. And you renewed your club membership. That's for work, Ashton retorted. Business is done on the golf course, you know that. I hid a smile. My granddaughter was observant beyond her years. After dessert, Peyton sent Octavia upstairs to do her homework despite her protests. When it was just the three of us, the atmosphere changed. Dad, Peyton began, still maintaining her friendly tone, there's something else we need to discuss. I'm listening. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like the real purpose of the dinner would finally be revealed. It's about Octavia. She exchanged a glance with Ashton. We've noticed that when she talks to you, she becomes dreamy. Talking about a career in history, museums, ancient documents. We're concerned. Why? I asked her directly. She's a smart girl with an appetite for knowledge. Isn't that what you want for your daughter? We want her to be successful, Ashton interjected. What's a career in history going to get her? A low salary and no prospects? Look at you, Cornelius. You've spent your life dealing with dusty papers, and where are you now? I felt the blood rush to my face. I'm in a place of my own choosing, Ashton, doing what I love and what I know. And living in a small apartment, barely making ends meet, Peyton added, with a note of pity in her voice. Dad, we love you, but we don't want that for Octavia. Is that what this is about? I put my glass on the table. You invited me here to tell me that I'm a bad influence on my own granddaughter. Not so harshly, Peyton sighed. We just think it would be better if you see each other less often, at least until she decides on her future career. I looked at my daughter, trying to see her as the little girl who once sat on my lap, listening to stories about ancient civilizations. But the woman in front of me was a stranger, with cold eyes and a calculating mind. I'm her grandfather, I said quietly. The only grandfather she has. You can't stop us from communicating. We can, Ashton said firmly. "And we will if we have to. Octavia is our daughter and we decide what's best for her." "What about what she wants?" I asked, feeling the anger building up inside. "She's a child," Peyton cut her off. "She doesn't know what she wants." I stood up, realizing that this conversation was pointless. "So you invited me here to ask me for money and then to tell me I can't see my granddaughter anymore?" I shook my head. "That's amazing." "Dad, don't be dramatic." Peyton stood up too. "We just want what's best for Octavia. And for you too. At your age, you should be thinking about retirement, not spending the last of your energy on these projects." I was about to reply when I noticed Octavia standing in the dining room doorway. I could see from her face that she had heard enough. "You can't forbid me to see my grandfather," she said in a trembling voice. "It is not fair." "Octavia!" Peyton exclaimed. "You should be upstairs. This is an adult conversation." "An adult conversation about using Grandpa and then throwing him away?" The girl's voice was filled with contempt. "I heard that. You want his money, but you don't want him to be part of our family." "Go to your room at once," Ashton shouted, his face reddening. "We'll talk about this later." Octavia looked at me apologetically, then turned and ran upstairs. I heard the door of her room slam. "I think I should go," I said, heading for the exit. "Dad, wait," Peyton followed me. "Don't leave like that. We're just worried about Octavia's future." "And about my possible money," I added, putting on my coat. "Don't worry, Peyton. I understood your message, clear and concise." I walked out of the house feeling a mixture of anger and sadness. My own daughter was ready to abandon me, again, because of her prejudices and material ambitions. The only ray of light was Octavia, who, despite her parents' best efforts, had retained her independence of thought and sense of fairness. Sitting in the car, I received a message on my phone. It was Octavia. "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I'll still be in touch with you no matter what they say. Love you." Those simple words warmed my heart. Perhaps not all was lost in this family. 3 days passed after the unpleasant family dinner. I was fully immersed in working on the Hamilton collection, using it as a shield from thoughts of my family. The documents turned out to be even more significant than originally thought. Among the letters were not only political discussions, but also personal reflections that revealed whole new facets of the Founding Fathers' characters. "You look tired, Mr. Taft," Adelaide Pierce remarked when she stopped by to check on my progress Wednesday afternoon. "Is everything all right?" I looked up from the document I was examining under the microscope. "Just family problems," I replied. "Nothing out of the ordinary." She sat down on the edge of the desk, which was uncharacteristic of her usually formal demeanor. "You know, you've done an amazing job these days. The director is very pleased with your preliminary reports. Why don't you take the day off and relax?" I chuckled. "What am I supposed to do? Sit at home and think about how my daughter and son-in-law are trying to cut me off from the only person in the family who loves me?" Adelaide raised her eyebrows in surprise. "I'm sorry." I rubbed my eyes. "I shouldn't have dumped my problems on you." "It's okay." She touched my shoulder lightly. "Sometimes talking to a stranger helps you see things more clearly." I sighed and briefly recounted the events of last Saturday, leaving out the details of Ashton's attempts to beg for money. "They think I'm a bad influence on Octavia because she's interested in history and wants to follow in my footsteps. Can you imagine? A love of knowledge is now considered a bad influence." Adelaide nodded thoughtfully. "You know what I think? You should use this weekend to show your granddaughter that you support her hobbies despite her parents' inhibitions." "And how would I do that? They've made it clear they don't want me in their house." She smiled. "I have an idea. Our museum store sells an amazing collection of reproductions of historical documents, including some of the Hamilton letters you're working on now. It would make a great gift for a girl interested in history." The thought of giving Octavia something related to my current work appealed to me. It would be our little secret, a bond her parents couldn't break. That's a great idea, I agreed. But how would I deliver the gift? I don't even know if she'll be home. Tomorrow is Thursday, Adelaide reminded me. Most families spend the evening at home. Just drive up and call her, or send a message in advance. I wasn't sure it would work, but the idea seemed worth a try. After work, I bought a set of reproductions at the museum store that included letters from Hamilton, Jefferson, and other founding fathers. They were excellent copies, printed on aged paper and arranged in an elegant faux leather folder. On Thursday evening, I ventured into the field. Shakespeare, as if sensing my nervousness, was particularly affectionate, rubbing against my legs as I got ready. "What do you say, buddy?" I asked, scratching behind his ears. "Is it worth the risk?" The cat purred, which I took as approval. I sent Octavia a quick text. "I'll be near your house at 7 o'clock tonight. I want to give you a message. If you can come out, it would be my pleasure. Love you, Grandpa." The reply came almost instantly. "I'll be waiting. Mommy's home, but Daddy's late at work. Love you." Not ideal, but I was willing to take the risk to see my granddaughter. The day was cool but clear. I put on my best tweed jacket, tied a silk tie, and even spritzed on the cologne Octavia had given me last Christmas. Beatrice caught me at the door as I was on my way out. "You look like $1,000,000, she smiled. "A date?" "Meeting my granddaughter," I replied. "A covert operation." She nodded understandingly. "Be careful. And if anything, I'm home all evening." The drive to Peyton's house took about 20 minutes. I parked around the corner so as not to attract the attention of the neighbors and sent Octavia a message of my arrival. A couple minutes later, she ran out of the house looking around like a spy on a mission. "Grandfather!" She rushed toward me, hugging me so tightly that I almost lost my balance. "Hush, hush," I laughed, hugging her back. "I don't want the neighbors to call the police thinking you're being kidnapped." She pulled back, her smile brightening. It was like she'd matured even more in the last few weeks, some new determination in her eyes. "Mom's home, but she's on the phone," she said. "We have about 15 minutes. I handed her a carefully wrapped gift. "It's for you. I hope you like it." Her eyes widened with anticipation. She carefully unwrapped it, and when she saw the contents, her face lit up with delight. "Reproductions of letters from the founding fathers," she exclaimed, carefully going through the documents. "This is amazing. Look, there's even a letter from Hamilton to Madison about the Bill of Rights." "I thought it might help you study history," I said, enjoying her reaction. "And maybe shut your teacher up the next time he mixes up the Adamses." She laughed, then suddenly became serious. "Grandpa, there's something I have to tell you. I've decided I want to be a historian like you, no matter what my parents say." I felt a warmth rise in my chest, but I tried to keep my expression neutral. "Are you sure?" "It's not an easy road, Octavia. Your parents are concerned about the practical side for a reason. I don't want a practical, boring job that will only make money," she interrupted me. "I want to do something important, something that matters. Like you. You always followed your passion even when everyone was against you." We talked for a few more minutes until suddenly the door of the house opened and Peyton appeared on the doorstep. "What's going on here?" Her voice was ringing with anger. Octavia shuddered and clutched the file folder tighter to herself. "Mom, Grandpa just brought me a gift. After we made it clear we didn't want him to come over uninvited." Peyton came down the stairs, her face contorted with rage. "Octavia, get inside right now." "But Mom, now!" Octavia threw me an apologetic look and, holding the folder tightly, ran into the house. As soon as it was just the two of us, Peyton turned to me. "You're out of line, Dad. We told you to stay away." "I thought I could visit my own granddaughter," I said, trying to stay calm. "She was glad to see me." "Of course she was," Peyton snorted. "You're filling her head with stupid ideas. She came home from school yesterday and said she wanted to be a historian." "A historian, Dad? Do you realize what an unpromising career that is? As opposed to what? I couldn't take it anymore. From becoming another office worker who hates his job but tolerates it for the money? Don't you dare tell me how to raise my daughter. Her voice shook with anger. We want a better future for her. Stability. Success. Success isn't just about money, I argued. It's also about being able to do what you love. Says the man who spent his life in poverty because of his lofty ideals, Peyton snorted. Look at you, Dad. You're 64 and you have nothing. No house, no decent car, no retirement savings. Is that really the fate you want for Octavia? You don't know anything about my life, Peyton, I said quietly. Not about my accomplishments or my financial situation. Oh, really? She smiled mockingly. What, your secret project suddenly made you rich? Don't be ridiculous, Dad. Ashton and I have been doing some research. The Heritage Institute is a small non-profit organization. They can't pay much. I was shocked. They were making inquiries, spying on me. This is crossing all lines. I turned to leave. I'm leaving. Yeah, go. Peyton followed me. And don't come back until we invite you. Which probably won't be for a while. I had already taken a few steps when she added, and don't try to bribe Octavia with your historical documents again. We won't let you influence her. Something inside me snapped. I turned around, feeling the blood pulsing in my temples. This was a gift. From the bottom of my heart. Because I love my granddaughter and have her best interests at heart, unlike you. Her interests? Peyton grabbed the cup of coffee she was holding. Her interests should be focused on building a successful career, not digging through dusty papers like you. Get lost, you pauper. And with those words, she threw the hot coffee in my face. I recoiled, feeling the hot liquid burn my skin and soak into my shirt. There was silence for a moment. Peyton seemed shocked at what she'd done. Dad, she started, but I had already turned to leave. Goodbye, Peyton, I said, wiping my face with my sleeve. I hope you're happy in the life you've chosen. When I returned home, I found Beatrice waiting for me with an anxious expression on her face. My God, what's happened? She exclaimed when she saw my coffee-stained clothes. The family reunion didn't go as planned, I grinned bitterly as I walked into the apartment. My daughter had expressed her opinion of my coffee lifestyle. I briefly told her what had happened, changing into clean clothes and applying a cold compress to my reddened skin. She called you a beggar. Beatrice was furious. Her own father. Apparently, material success is the only thing that matters to her, I sighed, sitting back in my chair. Shakespeare immediately jumped into my lap as if sensing my need for comfort. What are you going to do? Beatrice asked, handing me a glass of whiskey. I hesitated, stroking Shakespeare. After a few moments of silence, I made a decision. You know what? I'm going to show them they're wrong. All these years I had lived modestly because I liked it, because things and status were never important to me. But if material symbols are the only thing they understand, I'll give them material symbols. The next morning, I went to the car dealership where I spent several hours choosing a car that was completely at odds with my usual practical approach. In the end, I opted for a silver F-Type sporty Jaguar, sleek, powerful, and undeniably luxurious. The price was astronomical, but thanks to my new contract, I could afford it without much financial hardship. The buying process was surprisingly easy, especially once the salesman was convinced of my ability to pay. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I was driving my new car out of the showroom, feeling a mixture of elation and slight embarrassment at being so extravagant. My plan was simple. I knew that Octavia finished school at 3:30 and Peyton usually picked her up on Fridays. I decided to accidentally be near the school at that time so that both mother and daughter could see me in my new look. Briarwood Academy was located in an upscale neighborhood of the city, an imposing red brick building surrounded by manicured lawns and athletic fields. I parked the Jaguar right outside the main entrance where parents usually waited for their children and leaned casually on the hood, waiting for Octavia and Peyton to show up. Within minutes, my new car had already caught the attention of waiting parents and students exiting the school. I heard admiring comments and saw some of the boys stop to take a closer look at the car. At 20 minutes past 4, I spotted a familiar figure. Octavia came out of the school building chatting animatedly with a friend. She didn't notice me right away, but when our gazes met, her eyes widened in surprise. She quickly said something to her friend and headed toward me. "Grandpa?" She looked around the car incredulously. Is this your car?" "Yes." I couldn't hold back a smile. "I decided it was time to upgrade the transportation. You like it?" "It's amazing." Octavia walked around the car, admiring every detail. "But how? Why?" "It's a long story," I answered. "I'll tell it some other time." At that moment, Peyton's Lexus pulled into the parking lot. I saw her notice us, slow down, and stare out the windshield in obvious surprise, trying to figure out what was going on. "Mom's here," Octavia whispered, suddenly serious. "After yesterday." "It's okay," I reassured her. "Go to her. I just wanted to show you my new car." "I'll call you tonight," she promised, gave me a quick hug and ran to her mother's car. I watched Peyton get out of her Lexus, frozen in place as I fully realized that the luxury sports car belonged to me. Even from a distance, I could see the paint drain from her face. She gripped the car door as if looking for support. I slowly got behind the wheel of the Jaguar, turned on the engine, and slowly drove past Peyton, letting her get a good look at me behind the wheel. Our gazes met, and I noticed in her eyes a mixture of shock, disbelief, and maybe fear. Fear that all her ideas about me and my capabilities were wrong. I gave her a slight nod and drove out of the school parking lot feeling oddly satisfied. It was a petty gesture, unworthy of a man of my age and position. But God, it felt so good in that moment. No sooner had I reached home than my phone started ringing. Peyton's number. I considered ignoring the call, but decided that would only delay the inevitable. "Hello?" I answered, putting it on speaker. "What was that?" Peyton's voice sounded strained, almost hysterical. "Where did you get this car?" "I bought it today," I answered calmly. "I decided it was time to upgrade my transportation." "Don't play with me," she almost shouted. "Cars like this cost a fortune. Where did you get that kind of money?" "I told you I have a new project." "No project can pay enough to let you buy a Jaguar. What's going on, Dad? Did you get involved in something illegal, or is this just a rental to impress you?" I sighed. Typical of Peyton to assume the worst right off the bat. "Peyton, I don't have to report my finances to you, especially after yesterday. I overreacted yesterday." Her voice suddenly softened. "We were all on edge. Why don't you come over for dinner tonight and we'll talk it over, like a family?" I couldn't help but laugh. Yesterday, I was a pauper who wasn't allowed to see my own granddaughter, and today I'm suddenly part of the family again? All because I got an expensive car? "Daddy, please," she said with a pleading tone in her voice. "I need to understand what's going on. You look different. This car, it's not like you." "Maybe you just don't know me as well as you think you do," I replied. "I'm sorry, Peyton, but I'm not coming to dinner. I have other plans." "What plans?" she asked demandingly. "Dad, I have a right to know what you've gotten yourself into." "No, you don't." My voice got harder. "You've made it clear that I'm not part of your family. Well, now live with the consequences of your decision." I hung up, feeling a strange mixture of bitterness and satisfaction. The phone rang again, but I ignored it. Instead, I focused on the road, enjoying the smooth ride of my new car and the realization that, for the first time in years, I was in control of my relationship with my daughter. When I pulled up to my house, I saw Peyton's Lexus already parked in the driveway. She herself was waiting on the steps, pale and clearly agitated. When she saw me, she moved toward me, looking at me and the car as if she couldn't believe her eyes. "Daddy, we need to talk," she said, coming closer. "I want an explanation. Where did you get the money for this car? What was the project? Why didn't you say anything?" I looked at Peyton standing in front of my new Jaguar with a look of shock and disbelief on my face. Her confidence and disdain from yesterday had been replaced by a confusion that she hid poorly. "Daddy, please, let's talk," she repeated, taking a step toward me. "I just want to understand what's going on." I calmly locked the car and headed toward the driveway as if I didn't notice her agitated state. "Cornelius Taft!" Her voice became harsh. "I'm your daughter, and I have a right to know where you suddenly got the money for a luxury sports car." I stopped and slowly turned to her. "Yesterday I was a beggar who you forbade to see your own granddaughter. And today you suddenly remembered that I'm your father." Her cheeks turned slightly red. "Yesterday I overreacted. You know my temper. I inherited it from you, by the way. I don't remember ever pouring coffee on someone and calling them derogatory nicknames," I said dryly. Peyton lowered her eyes, suddenly looking like a little girl who knew what she'd done was wrong. It reminded me of when she was still my little girl, not the cold and calculating woman she'd become. "I apologize for my behavior," she said quietly. "It was unforgivable. But you have to understand that Ashton and I are just concerned about Octavia and her future. And frankly, about you too. You've always lived so, modest. And now you show up in a Jaguar that's worth at least $80,000. It's scary, Dad." "Why should my financial well-being scare you?" I asked, crossing my arms across my chest. "Isn't that what you've always wanted? For me to be successful by your standards? I want to know that this success is real and legitimate." Her last word came out. Legitimate. Her last word sounded almost like an accusation. I laughed, unable to contain myself. "Do you really think that I, a man who has dedicated his life to studying history and preserving cultural heritage, would suddenly do something illegal? At 64, I decided to become a criminal mastermind." Peyton was even more embarrassed. "No, of course not. But you have to admit, it's kind of weird. All your life you've barely made ends meet, refused my financial help out of pride, and now all of a sudden you're driving around in a car that costs as much as a small house." I sighed. There was some truth to what she said. My sudden, extravagant purchase did seem unusual for a man of my stature. "Peyton, I got a well-paid contract. That's all you need to know. I can't divulge the details because of a confidentiality agreement." "But what kind of contract? With whom? How much?" She wouldn't give up. "Dad, I just want to make sure you're not being lied to or used." "I'm not being cheated or taken advantage of," I said firmly. "And I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself no matter what you think of me." At that moment, Beatrice came out of the driveway carrying a garbage bag. When she saw us, she slowed down, assessing the situation. "Hello?" She nodded to Peyton. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "Hello, Miss Winslow." Peyton smiled, strained. "Yes, it's a beautiful day." "Did your father show you his new automobile?" Beatrice smiled slyly, clearly enjoying the moment. "It's an amazing car, isn't it?" "Yes, it is," Peyton agreed. "I was just asking where it came from." "Oh, your father is a very important person now," Beatrice winked at me. "He's working on a secret project of national importance, but I can't tell you anything else. It's a state secret, you understand." I could hardly contain a smile as I watched Peyton's eyebrows go up. "A state secret?" she repeated incredulously. "Dad, what is she talking about?" "Beatrice likes to be dramatic," I shrugged. "But yes, my project does require complete confidentiality, and that's the end of the subject." Beatrice, having thrown out the trash, came back to us. "Peyton, would you like to come in for a cup of tea? I was just baking your father's blueberry pie. He said you loved it when you were a kid." My daughter looked confused by this sudden change of subject, but nodded. "Yes, thank you." It would be a pleasure. The three of us went up to my apartment where Shakespeare met us, meowing demandingly and wrapping himself around my legs. "Hi, handsome." I leaned down to pet him. "Sorry I'm late." "You have a cat?" Peyton was surprised. "Since when?" "5 years now," I answered as I watched her look around the apartment. I could see that she was noting new details: the modern TV on the wall, the collection of rare books in the closet, the antique clock on the mantelpiece. I'd had all of these things before, but she'd never noticed because she rarely visited my home. "Sit down. I'll get the tea and cake," Beatrice said, heading into the kitchen. "I'll help," I offered, following her. In the kitchen, Beatrice asked quietly, "Are you sure you want her here? After everything that's happened?" "She's my daughter," I answered just as quietly. "And maybe this is a chance to clear things up a bit. Besides, I can keep in touch with Octavia through her." Beatrice nodded understandingly. "Just be careful. Her sudden interest in your life came only after she saw you in an expensive car." I knew she was right, but part of me still hoped there was something left in Peyton of the loving girl I'd once known. When we returned to the living room with tea and cake, Peyton was sitting on the couch, looking at the picture of Octavia on the coffee table. "She looks so much like you," Peyton remarked as I set the tray down. "Same eyes, same stubborn chin. And the same passion for history," I added, pouring the tea. Peyton sighed. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Dad, I realized that Ashton and I were a little harsh yesterday. Of course, we have no right to forbid you from seeing Octavia. And if she's really interested in history, perhaps that's not such a bad thing." "What a sudden change of heart," I remarked, cutting off a piece of pie. "Something tells me it's not just about realizing your mistakes." Peyton blushed. "You always saw right through me." She sipped her tea. "Okay, I admit it. Your new, financial situation has made Ashton and I reevaluate some things. Perhaps we were wrong to think that a career as a historian necessarily leads to poverty. Or maybe you thought that a rich grandfather historian was better than a poor grandfather historian," Beatrice interjected, not hiding her sarcasm. Peyton gave her an irritated glance, but remained silent. "Anyway," she continued, turning to me, "Ashton and I would like to invite you to dinner this Saturday, to talk things over and maybe start over. Octavia would be very pleased." I put down my fork and looked at my daughter carefully. "Peyton, I appreciate your invitation, but let's be honest with each other. All you and Ashton see in me is money. Yesterday I was a nobody. Today I'm suddenly a welcome guest, just because I bought an expensive car." "That's not true," she objected, but her eyes betrayed the truth. "It is," I shook my head, "and I don't want that kind of relationship. Not with you, not with Ashton. I want to see Octavia, but not at the cost of hypocrisy." "So you're saying no?" Her voice has grown cold. "Dinner, yes, but I would like to keep in touch with Octavia. Perhaps we could set up some sort of schedule to meet without having to pretend we're a happy family." Peyton finished her tea in silence and set her cup down. "I'll talk to Ashton," she said finally, "but I can't promise he'll agree, especially after you rejected our offer of reconciliation." "We both know it wasn't a sincere offer," I replied calmly. "And tell Ashton that I'm not going to fund his investments or pay for your European vacations if that's what he expects from our reconciliation." Peyton flared up, confirming my suspicions. "You were always too perceptive," she stood up. "Thanks for the tea, but I have to go. I'll be in touch with you about Octavia." After she left, Beatrice looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You were cruel to her." "She's been cruel to me for years," I replied, putting away the dishes, "and I don't want to start a fake relationship based only on her sudden interest in my money." "And rightly so," Beatrice nodded. "But still, she's your daughter, and maybe somewhere deep down inside, she still loves you." "Perhaps," I agreed without much conviction. The next few days passed in tense anticipation. I returned to my work at the Institute, fully immersed in researching Hamilton's collection. Analyzing documents and writing detailed reports helped take my mind off family problems. When I returned home on Wednesday evening, a message from Octavia was waiting for me. "Grandpa, my parents let me see you on weekends. Can I come over on Saturday? P.S. They don't know I'm writing to you now." I smiled, imagining her secretly sending me this message, probably hidden in her room. I replied, "Of course, sweetie. I'll be waiting for you anytime you want. Why don't we go to the museum?" Her answer came almost instantly. "Yes, to the historical museum. I read there's a new exhibit about the Constitutional Convention." I was touched by her enthusiasm. Despite her parents' best efforts to turn her away from history, her interest only grew. Saturday morning, I received a strange phone call from Ashton. His voice sounded unnaturally friendly. "Cornelius, good morning. I hope I didn't wake you up." "No, I've been up for a while," I answered cautiously, wondering what he wanted. "Good, good. Listen, about Octavia. Peyton and I have been thinking about it, and we think you're right. We can't keep you two from seeing each other. She can spend the day with you, but please have her home by 7 p.m. "Thank you, Ashton," I said, surprised at his sudden concession. "I appreciate your decision." "Yeah, well, family's family, right?" He laughed awkwardly. "By the way, I heard you bought a new car." "A Jaguar, I think. Impressive." "Oh, that's what it is." I could see why he was suddenly so cooperative. "Yes, I decided to treat myself," I said neutrally. That's great. You deserve nice things, Cornelius. By the way, I was thinking, maybe we could have lunch together sometime, just you and me. There are some, investment opportunities I'd like to talk to you about." I could barely contain my laughter. Did he really think I'd believe his sudden interest in talking to me? Very tempting, Ashton, but I'm afraid my schedule is too tight right now. Work takes up most of my time. Yes, of course I understand. His disappointment was almost palpable. Maybe some other time. Anyway, Octavia will be ready by 10 in the morning. Will you pick her up? Yes, I'll be at your place at 10. As I hung up the phone, I shook my head, surprised at how predictable Peyton and Ashton had been. As soon as they saw the outward signs of wealth, their attitude toward me had changed completely. I was no longer a useless old man living in the past, but a potential source of financial gain. At exactly 10 o'clock, I drove up to their house in my new Jaguar. Octavia was already waiting on the porch, dressed in jeans and a sweater with a small backpack over her shoulders. Standing beside her were Peyton and Ashton, both with strange smiles. "Grandpa!" Octavia rushed over to me as soon as I got out of the car. "I'm so happy to see you." I hugged her, feeling my heart warm at her sincere affection. "It's good to see you too, sweetie." Peyton and Ashton followed, their eyes fixed on my car. "Impressive car, Dad," Peyton said, running her hand over the smooth surface of the hood. "Must have cost a fortune." "A good investment," I replied evasively. "Ready, Octavia? We're in for an exciting day." "More than exciting." She smiled, then turned to her parents. "Bye, Mom. Bye, Dad. I'll see you tonight." "Wait a minute." Ashton put his hand on her shoulder, stopping her. "Cornelius, maybe we could all have dinner together tonight. At that new restaurant downtown, I hear they have great food there." I noticed Octavia roll her eyes, clearly realizing what was going on. "Unfortunately, I already have plans for tonight," I replied. "Perhaps some other time." "What plans?" Peyton asked with ill-concealed curiosity. "A work meeting." I opened the car door for Octavia. "Don't worry, I'll have her home by 7, as agreed." We drove off, leaving them standing in the driveway with disappointed faces. "They're so obvious," Octavia snorted as we pulled away. "A week ago, Dad said you were a bad influence on me, and now all of a sudden he wants to take you out to dinner at an expensive restaurant." "People change their minds," I said diplomatically. "Yeah, especially when they see an expensive car. She shook her head. I heard them discussing you last night. Dad said you must have gotten a huge inheritance or won the lottery, and Mom thinks you're working on some secret government project. She even Googled your name trying to find information. I couldn't help but smile, imagining their theories. And what did she find? Nothing new, just old articles about the Jefferson letter scandal. Octavia turned to me. Grandpa, you really can't tell me what you're working on, not even to me? I threw a quick glance at her. Her face expressed genuine interest without a shadow of the self-serving motives I'd seen in her parents. It's really a confidential project, Octavia. But I can tell you that it involves very important historical documents that could change our understanding of early American history. Her eyes lit up. Documents from the founding period? The correspondence of the founding fathers? Something like that, I smiled at her insight. But I can't say any more than that, at least not yet. I understand, she nodded gravely. Secrecy is important in a case like this. I won't tell anyone, not even my parents, especially my parents. We spent the day at the History Museum, where Octavia showed amazing knowledge and intuition for her age. She asked the guide such deep questions that at one point he asked her if she was preparing to enter the history department. Yes, she answered without hesitation. I want to become a historian, specializing in early American history. I was touched by her confidence and determination. At 14, she already knew what she wanted out of life and was not afraid to go against her parents' wishes. After the museum, we had lunch at a small cafe, where we continued to discuss the exhibition and her school projects. You know, I've decided to write a research paper on the role of women in shaping the early U.S. financial system, she said, sipping her milkshake. Everyone writes about the military and politicians, but no one pays attention to how wives and daughters influence the decisions of their husbands and fathers. That's a brilliant idea. I was genuinely impressed. Many historians ignore this aspect. If you want, I can recommend some sources. Yes, please. She pulled out a notebook ready to take notes. And grandfather, thank you for supporting me. At home, I can't talk about history without causing annoyance. Your parents are just worried about your future, I said, even though I didn't really believe those words myself. They want you to be successful. But what is success? She put the notebook aside. For them, it's just money and status. But I think real success is doing what you love and doing something meaningful. Like you. I was touched by her words. You know, Octavia, I wasn't always so sure of my choices, especially after the Jeffersonian letter scandal. There were times when I wondered if I should have gone against the tide. But you were right. Her eyes sparkled. And everyone knows that now, don't they? Not everyone, but some important people do, I smiled. And it's a reminder that sometimes you have to wait a long time for the truth to prevail. After lunch, we decided to take a walk in the park. It was a beautiful day, warm for fall, with bright sunshine and a light breeze rustling the leaves that were beginning to turn yellow. Grandfather, Octavia stopped suddenly at the pond where the ducks were swimming. I wanted to ask, are you happy? In general, in your life? Her question caught me off guard. I hesitated, looking at the calm surface of the water. Yes, I think I'm happy, I finally answered. I've had an interesting life, full of ups and downs. I did what I loved even when it was hard. I have true friends like Beatrice, and I have you, my wonderful granddaughter. So yes, I am happy. Even though Mom and Dad, she faltered awkwardly. Parent-child relationships can be complicated sometimes, I said softly. Your mom wasn't always like that. When she was little, we were very close. She loved it when I told her stories about ancient civilizations and great historical figures. Did she? Octavia looked surprised. She never talked about it. A lot changed after the scandal and my divorce from your grandmother, I sighed. Peyton was a teenager then, and it was hard for her. She chose her mother's side, and as time went on, Our relationship became more and more strained. And now she's suddenly interested in you again because you bought an expensive car, Octavia said with an uncharacteristic cynicism for her age. Life is complicated, Octavia, and people are complicated too. Even your parents. They're not perfect, but they love you and want the best for you, even if their idea of best is different from yours. She nodded thoughtfully, tossing breadcrumbs to the ducks. You know what's weird? She said after a pause. They always told me that money wasn't important, that it was more important to be a good person. But all they talk about is status, career, expensive things. And now all of a sudden they've decided that you're a fit grandfather again, just because you have money. People often contradict themselves. I put my hand on her shoulder. It's important that you decide for yourself what values are the most important for you. I've already decided, she smiled at me. I want to be like you. I want to follow my passion, even if it's not easy. The months flew by. I was fully immersed in the Hamilton collection, which was even more important than I'd originally anticipated. Every day brought new discoveries, unknown details of the founding of the U.S. financial system, personal reflections of the founding fathers on the future of the nation, secret agreements between political figures of the time. Adelaide Pierce became not just a colleague, but a trusted friend. Her in-depth knowledge of historical documents and preservation helped me move through my work faster than I expected. Cornelius, you've done an incredible job, she said one evening as we went over my reports together. The director is thrilled. No one expected the documents to be so historically significant. Thank you, but it's not just me, I replied, leaning back in my chair. My back was aching after hours spent working on the microscope. Without your support and help, I wouldn't have gotten through this so quickly. She smiled, gathering the papers into a folder. I have news for you. The director wants to meet with you tomorrow. I think it will be about renewing your contract. I nodded, though everything inside me clenched with excitement. Over the months, I'd gotten used to my new life. Interesting work, decent pay, respect from my colleagues. The thought that all this could continue filled me with a hope and enthusiasm I hadn't felt in a long time. The next day I met with the director of the Institute, Dr. William Harrison, a tall, gray-haired man with shrewd eyes and impeccable manners. Mr. Taft, he shook my hand firmly. At last we meet in person. I've heard a lot about your brilliant work from Miss Pierce. Thank you, Dr. Harrison. I sat down in the offered chair. It was an honor to work with such an outstanding collection. And you've met all our expectations. He opened the folder in front of him. Your reports on the authenticity of the documents, their historical context and significance are excellent. Thanks to you, we now know that this collection will change the way historians think about the early period of the Republic. I nodded modestly, waiting for him to continue. In fact, that's why I invited you here today. He motioned a document toward me. The Institute would like to offer you a permanent position as a senior expert on historical documents. The contract is for 5 years with the possibility of extension. I took the document, running my eyes over the terms. The salary was more than generous, even more than I was getting from my current project. I don't know what to say, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. It's an honor. It's our honor, Mr. Taft, the director smiled. People with your knowledge, experience, and, most importantly, intuition are rare. The Institute would be happy to have you on its permanent team. I signed the contract without hesitation. 20 years of professional exile were over. I was once again recognized and in demand in my field. On my way home, I stopped by the bank where I met with my financial advisor. Over the past few months, I had accumulated a substantial amount of money in my account. I had always lived modestly, and my new salary allowed me to put most of it away. Mr. Taft, with that kind of income, you might want to think about buying a house, the advisor said as he looked over my accounts. Or perhaps building an investment portfolio? I have other plans, I replied. I'd like to set up an educational trust for my granddaughter, to provide for her future college education. The counselor nodded, making notes. That's a wise decision. We can set up conditions under which the funds will be available for tuition only. Are there any special requirements? I thought for a moment. Yes. I want her to have access to the trust only after her 18th birthday, and only if she enrolls in college. And the choice of major should be entirely her own decision, without outside pressure. It can be done legally, the counselor wrote down my wishes. Would her parents have access to these funds? Absolutely not, I answered firmly. Only my granddaughter should manage this money, and only for her education. We completed the necessary paperwork and I left the bank with a sense of accomplishment. Octavia will get to follow her dreams, regardless of what her parents think about it. When I returned home, I found Beatrice tending to my cat. Shakespeare missed me, she said when I walked in. He and I were philosophizing about the mortality of existence. I smiled as I took off my coat. And what conclusions did you come to? That life is short, but a good night's sleep and good food are eternal values, she winked. How was your meeting with the director? I told her about the new contract and she was genuinely happy for me. I always knew justice would prevail, she said, hugging me. You deserve this recognition, Cornelius, more than anyone else. Thank you. I was touched by her support. You know, I've also set up an educational trust for Octavia, so she can study history if she wants to, regardless of what her parents think. A smart move, Beatrice approved. What about you? Maybe it's time to consider a more comfortable place to live. Don't get me wrong, your apartment is charming, but with your new options, I wondered. I've always loved my modest apartment, but lately I've really started to feel the need for more space, for books, for work, for life. You're right, I finally said. I think it's time for a change. Over the next few weeks, I scoured real estate listings until I found the perfect one, a small but elegant house in the historic district of the city. It was built in the 19th century and retained many of the original features: high ceilings, wood floors, marble fireplaces. The two-story building with its spacious library and sunroom seemed made for me. The transaction went quickly, and soon I owned my own home, for the first time in my life. The move took a few days, but with the help of Beatrice and a few colleagues from the Institute, everything went smoothly. Shakespeare was unhappy with the change at first, but quickly settled into his new home, especially loving the sunny windowsill in the library where he could spend hours watching the birds in the garden. I didn't tell Peyton and Ashton about my move, but Octavia knew my new address and often came to visit on weekends. Our meetings became regular. Every Saturday we would go to museums, historical sites, or just sit in my new library discussing books and historical events. Your house is amazing, Grandpa, she said one of those days, looking at the bookshelves I'd filled with rare history books. It suits you so well. Thank you, honey. I handed her a cup of hot chocolate. I like it too, and I'm glad you can come here. She snuggled into the chair, pulling her knees up to her chest. My parents don't know where you live, she said suddenly. They tried to find out, but I didn't tell them. My mom even followed me once, but I went to the library first and she thought I was just studying there. I sighed, not surprised by this kind of behavior from Peyton. They've been very persistent about finding out about your job and money, Octavia continued, especially since you stopped coming to our house. Dad is always talking about some investment opportunity he'd like to discuss with you. I'm sure he has a lot of interesting ideas, I said dryly. Octavia giggled. He even tried to bribe me to tell me about you. He said he'd buy me a new laptop if I found out where you worked and how much you made. I shook my head, chagrined but not surprised. And what did you say? That I don't need a new laptop, she shrugged, and that your personal life was your business. He was very unhappy. I was proud of her integrity. Despite her parents' best efforts, she had grown up to be an independent and moral person. "By the way," I said, remembering the trust, "I have news for you. I have set up an educational fund for you. The money will be available after your 18th birthday when you go to college." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Grandfather, that's so generous. But you didn't have to—" "I wanted to do it," I interrupted her, "so you could study what you were really interested in without financial constraints." She jumped up and hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. "It means more to me than you can imagine." A week later, a storm blew in. Peyton called me late at night, her voice shaking with anger. "How could you, Daddy?" she screamed as soon as I picked up the phone. "Set up a trust for Octavia without our knowledge? Without our consent?" I sighed. Apparently, Octavia had told them about my gift. "It's my money, Peyton. I'm free to use it as I see fit." "We're her parents," she kept yelling. "We have the right to know about any financial decisions regarding our daughter." "The money will only be available to her after her 18th birthday and only for her education," I replied calmly. "I don't see the problem with that. The problem is that you're undermining our parental authority." Her voice got even higher. "Now, Octavia has declared that she's going to study history in college because you're supporting her dreams." I couldn't hold back a smile, even though Peyton couldn't see it, of course. "And what's wrong with that? History is a worthy field of study." "It's futile, and you know it." She was silent for a second, then continued in a more controlled tone. "Listen, Dad, we have to get together and talk about this. All of us together as a family. Ashton says we can find a compromise." "What kind of compromise, Peyton?" I asked tiredly. "That I revoke the trust, or that I add you as trustees?" Her silence was eloquent enough. "That's what I thought," I said. "The answer is no. The trust will stay as it is. Octavia will get the money when she goes to college, and she can study what she wants." "We're her parents," Peyton repeated, her voice turning cold. "We can forbid her from seeing you." "She's almost 15, I countered. "She'll be an adult in 3 years. Do you really want to spend those years in conflict with her? Because believe me, if you forbid her to see me, she'll never forgive you." Peyton was silent. I knew she understood the truth of what I was saying. Octavia was too much like me, stubborn, principled, ready to fight for what she thought was right. "We'll come to see you tomorrow," she said at last. "The whole family. We must discuss this in person." "I have no desire to see you or Ashton," I replied. "But Octavia is always welcome in my house. You haven't even told us where you live now." Her voice was irritated again. "We only heard about your move from Octavia." "Because I didn't want you to know," I answered honestly. "Given your behavior lately, I prefer to keep my distance." "That's ridiculous," she snorted. "We're your family, Dad." "No, Peyton. You and Ashton are not my family. You were clear about that when you called me a pauper and forbade me from seeing Octavia. The only member of your family I care about is my granddaughter." "You can't be serious." Her voice trembled. "Whatever happened in the past, we can fix it, especially now that your financial situation has improved." "Exactly," I grinned bitterly. "Especially now. When I was just an old man with little income, you wanted to get rid of me. Now that I have money, you suddenly remember family ties. That's hypocrisy, Peyton." "How dare you?" She was outraged. "We've always taken care of you." "No, we haven't," I said firmly. "And now you're not concerned about my well-being, but about getting access to my money. I didn't give you my new address because I don't want you showing up on my doorstep with another investment opportunity or request for financial assistance." There was a long pause. "So that's it?" Her voice turned icy. "You just cut us out of your life?" "You cut me out of your life years ago," I replied calmly. "I'm just making it official. The only thing I ask is that you don't interfere with my communication with Octavia. What if we forbid her from seeing you?" She sounded threatened. Then in 3 years, when she gets access to the trust and goes off to college, you'll probably never see her again, I said, knowing my words were cruel but true. She's smart and independent, Peyton, and she won't forget if you try to control her that way. Peyton took a deep breath. You've changed, Dad. Money has changed you. No, Peyton. I'm still the same person I've always been. You're the one who didn't see the real me until you decided I could be financially useful. After that conversation, I expected trouble, but to my surprise, Peyton and Ashton didn't forbid Octavia from seeing me. Perhaps they realized it would only alienate their daughter, or perhaps they still hoped to gain access to my finances through her. Instead, they changed tactics, suddenly becoming unusually interested in the story. Ashton had even bought some books on the Founding Fathers and was trying to discuss them with Octavia. It's so obvious, my granddaughter told me during our regular Saturday meeting. Dad suddenly started saying that maybe a career as a historian wasn't such a bad idea, that he'd always liked history, he was just worried about my future. And you believe him? I asked, pouring the tea. She snorted. Of course I don't. He can't even tell the difference between Adams and Jefferson. Yesterday he asked if Hamilton had been president. We laughed together, and I felt a warm wave of pride in my granddaughter. Despite her parents' best efforts, she had stayed true to herself. But you know what, Grandpa? She continued, becoming serious. Despite all their attempts at manipulation, I can't hate them. They are my parents, and somewhere deep down inside they love me. They just don't understand. I was touched by her wisdom and generosity. You're right, Octavia. They love you in their own way, and it's important to remember that, even when you don't agree with them. She nodded, looking thoughtfully into her cup. I want you and Mom to make up. She's your daughter, like I'm her daughter. Shouldn't a family stick together despite their differences? I sighed, feeling a familiar heaviness in my chest. Was there still hope for reconciliation with Peyton? After everything that had happened? After years of estrangement and recent hypocrisy? Sometimes the wounds are too deep, Octavia, I said softly. But I promise I won't close the door completely. If your mother ever wants a real reconciliation, not because of money or status, but out of a genuine desire to repair the relationship, I'll be willing to listen to her. Octavia brightened, as if my words gave her hope. Thank you, Grandfather. That's all I ask. That evening, after I saw Octavia off, I sat in my new library for a long time, staring at the dancing flames in the fireplace. Shakespeare purred in my lap, enjoying the warmth and peace. My life had come full circle, from success to downfall and back to success again, from family man to outcast and now to a man who had found his way and his place in the world again. I didn't know if I'd ever be able to reconnect with Peyton. Perhaps too much water had flowed under the bridges of our lives. But I knew one thing. Octavia would go her own way with my support and faith in her. And maybe, through her, the thread of the family bond would not be permanently severed. After all, history teaches us that time can heal even the deepest wounds. And as a historian, I couldn't help but hope that this lesson would prove true for my own family as well. The Hamilton Letters Project was completed on time. The Institute was planning a grand exhibition that would be a sensation in academic circles. My name was first on the list of experts working on the collection, a kind of rehabilitation after 20 years of professional neglect. I was ready for a new chapter of my life, with a new home, a secure future, and a granddaughter who carried my passion for history. The relationship with my daughter remained fractured, but I had learned to accept it as part of my own story, complex, imperfect, but still mine. And at the end of the day, sitting in my library with a book in my hands and a cat on my lap, I could honestly say that despite all the hardships and losses, I had lived life by my own rules and stayed true to myself, and that, in the end, was more important than anything else.